Chapter 361. Master, you don't know. When you couldn't see anything clearly, even the earth was black. In those pitch-black, dim, and completely helpless days, I especially hoped that there would be someone who could help me. Help me. Even if it was just a little help, it would be enough. The little Stoic softly mumbled to herself. Even if Murong Sun didn't understand, her youngest disciple had been cultivating in the sect since she was 7 years old. Where did she get the time to form a team? But she knew that her youngest disciple's tone right now was especially desolate and helpless. When she stared at you, her gaze was empty, as if she was looking through your soul at an unknown place. She tenderly hugged her youngest disciple and gently patted her small body. Silly child, it's all in the past. Everything is in the past. You still have Master. Master will definitely accompany you. Don't worry, Master will skin whoever dares to bully you. I definitely won't be polite to them. Emolien, who was blocked in the distance, dazedly stared at the small figure crouching by the aquatic plants. She cried. He actually angered her to tears. 2 streaks of sparkling and translucent tear stains actually hung on her small, stoic face that had always been expressionless. Emolien felt like he was struck by lightning. He stood there dumbstruck, not even noticing that his fingers had turned blue from clenching them so hard that they were about to break. He was about to hate himself to death. Right now, there were only 5 words echoing in his mind. Forward. Work. Done. Up. Up. He previously worked so hard and worked so hard for so long before he finally tore open a small hole in the little fellow's impenetrable heart. But now, she had completely shrunk back inside. She was like a small quail that wrapped herself up tightly again, not revealing a trace of wind and not allowing anyone to look at her. Just like back then, when she was calmly killing people by the quagmire with a wooden expression and turned around to apathetically glance at him. He couldn't accept this. As soon as he recalled her apathetic gaze that completely ignored him and her expression that was like a pool of stagnant water in a barren desert, he completely couldn't accept the reality that he was about to face. Wasn't it enough that he admitted his mistake? Why was it like this? Everything was fine just now. No, he had to talk to her. He had to make things clear to her immediately. He wasn't a silk pants like Wei Nanfeng. She didn't like him befriending someone like Wei Nanfeng, so their friendship was over. Jojo. Emolien's figure flashed, and she was about to rush to Arbor's side. Xue Xiao was furious. She pulled out her sword and pointed it at him. What are you doing? I told you not to come over. Do you think my junior sister is not sad enough? Get lost. I want to talk to Jojo. Emolien's pitch-black phoenix eyes flashed slightly, and a few purple flames suddenly rose from her fingertips as she angrily roared. Crown Prince. Bailey, she appeared in front of him in a flash and reached out to block him. Think carefully. If you make a move, you won't be able to turn back. With the little girl's eagerness to protect her sect, if they really did something to her sect, would they be able to turn back? Emolien stood there in a daze. His eyes stared straight at the little girl's little face that had turned her head around. There was still a drop of lustrous tear on her little face. The little girl's expression was ice-cold as she stared at him. In that pair of eyes, there was indeed no warmth. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. How could he go back to the past like this? He had worked so hard, wanting her to accept him. The purple flames on her fingertips slowly dimmed. Emolien stared blankly at the little girl and muttered to herself, Jojo, you can try to understand me a little more. Chapter 362. After a day and a half, everyone successfully left the Great Swamp. Perhaps it was because the group became serious later on that their firepower was too fierce or something else, but the zombie crocodiles they encountered later were all taken care of in a matter of minutes, and there were no more casualties. After exiting the Great Swamp, the closest place to rest was a desolate and dilapidated village. At the entrance of the village was a dilapidated tea house made of straw. There were many dilapidated tables and stools placed outside, but they were still barely usable. When Murong Sun led the group over, the curtains of the tattered mat inside the tea house just happened to be lifted from the inside. As soon as they met, they were 3 burly men with their sleeves rolled up high, revealing their strong muscles. They were all covered in dirt. When the leader noticed Morong Soon alone, he revealed his yellowed teeth and chuckled. "Oh my, second brother, third brother, I didn't expect there to be a fat sheep in this dilapidated village. We can capture them and send them to Black City together with the goods inside." When the group of Holy Water Sect disciples silently walked up and drew their swords, the burly man revealed a dumbfounded expression again. These young ladies could not be mentioned in the same breath as the goods inside, but they looked like they were not to be trifled with. When the leader looked up, he finally discovered that there was another group of 50 or so people following behind the young ladies. He was instantly terrified. The 3 burly men knelt on the ground with a plop and wailed pitifully, "Great Aunt, please spare our lives. We were blind and offended your esteemed guests." "Hey, miss, wait." Seeing Abba walk into the dilapidated tea-house without a word, the burly man cried out in alarm. "You are the villagers here?" Morong Soon asked coldly. "No. We just passed by and stopped here to rest." The burly man's eyes flickered. Abba quickly walked out of the tea-house, her stoic face brimming with killing intent. Without any explanation, he snatched the sword from a senior sister's hand and slashed it over. The long and flat head flew high into the air and was turned into a bloody mist by a terrifying profound energy in the air, which sprinkled down. The other 2 burly men nearly peed their pants in fright. Their bodies trembled as they shrieked in a distorted voice, "What are you doing?" "Slaughtering pigs. Can't you see?" The little girl said coldly. "Those inside are your cows and sheep. And all of you are nothing but pigs in my eyes. In this world, if you don't want to be a pig, if you don't want to be a cow or a sheep, then you should become stronger. However, you won't have another chance in this lifetime." As soon as he finished speaking, he sliced off a head with his sword, mercilessly taking the lives of the other 2. "Little girl, when are you going to stop messing around?" Wei Nanfeng's face was slightly hot. It couldn't be said that he wasn't shocked in his heart, but he was more angry out of humiliation. This little girl who killed decisively was truly terrifying. When she did not speak, almost no one dared to speak. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it was unbearable. Along the way, even the restless Xiaomi stopped making a fuss and kept her mouth shut. Abba coldly glanced at him. Wei Nanfeng could not describe what he felt from that gaze. It was so dark that not a single ray of light could be seen. Wei Nanfeng was a bit discouraged. He irritably raked his hair and said, Fine, just take it that Bailey and I were wrong. We shouldn't disregard the lives of our teammates. We know we were wrong, okay? But all of this has nothing to do with Crown Prince Lien. Can you not take your anger out on him for no reason?" "Shut up." The Crown Prince suddenly rebuked angrily. The oval-faced girl standing next to Bailey, she did not even dare to breathe loudly. She felt like there was a rock pressing down on her heart. It was unbearable. Chapter 363. Aber silently walked to the side. The Holy Water Sect's young ladies entered the thatched tea-house. Not long after, they brought out a dozen women and children with tattered clothes and wounds of various sizes. The naive Princess Xiaomi abruptly widened her eyes, and shock filled her oval face. They, them. Among these women and children who were sold to Black City, the oldest was in her 20s, while the youngest was only 7 or 8 years old. Every single one of them had been ruthlessly abused and imprisoned in a dark room for too long. As a result, their expressions were still empty and lifeless even when they walked under the sunlight. Aba's gaze landed on the last young woman. The young woman was not tall, and there was a half-dried bloodstain on her forehead. Half of her face had been beaten black and blue. Something was wrapped in a piece of moldy rag, and she held it tightly in her arms. Just as the two senior sisters were about to approach, they were stopped by Aba. Aba raised the sword in her hand bit by bit. She felt that this ordinary sword was as heavy as 1,000 catties. "What are you doing?" Xiaomi furrowed her brows and shouted angrily, "Are you addicted to killing people?" "Shut up." Not only did Mo Lien yell at her, but Bailey Shi and Wei Nanfeng also yelled at her in unison. Xiaomi instantly felt extremely aggrieved, and her tears were about to fall out. Why were they all scolding her? "Sorry," Arba coldly muttered. The young woman seemed to have sensed something and suddenly loosened the moldy rag in her hand. A monster with a head twice the size of its body crawled out and bared its fangs at everyone. "Ah!" Xiaomi shrieked, "Zombie, zombie, hurry, hurry and kill it." Bailey Shi's cold gaze made Xiaomi instantly shut her mouth. "Miss, can't you let us go? I'll take him to a secluded forest deep in the mountains and spend his last days there." The young woman suddenly knelt down with a plop and pleaded in a tearful voice. Arba's fingers had already turned slightly white from gripping the sword, but she still shook her head. "Sorry, I can't. You've already entered the late stage of the incubation period and will soon lose your consciousness." The young woman covered her face and sobbed. The strange-headed baby in her arms ground its fangs and suddenly pounced. The little woman hugged her child tightly with her frail arms. Seeing that it couldn't get away, the little zombie turned around and bit her arm. This scene frightened Princess Xiaomi. She took a few steps back and hid behind Bailey Shi. The young woman didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. With a gentle expression, she lowered her head to look at her child. "Miss, I beg you. Can you chop off our heads and bury them together? I want to be with my own children forever. Is that okay?" Arba's eyes reddened as he nodded solemnly. "Okay. I wish you all good fortune and good health in your next life." A cold glint flashed across the 3-foot-long green peak that flew into the air. Under the illumination of the noon sun, there wasn't the slightest bit of warmth. Emo Lien found the little fellow on a small slope outside the village. At that time, she was standing there with her back to him. Her fingertips were resting on a thin leaf, and she was playing a sad tune that he had never heard before. Like the Zhu Ling residence above, like the gate of grief below, transcending the difficulties of the 3 realms, passing through the primitive bricks. After the tune ended, she stood there for a long time without turning her head. Until the sun set in the west and the curtain of night faintly shrouded, she stood there motionless like a statue. Emolien's heart was so stifled that it was about to explode. He could no longer restrain his explosive emotions. His figure flashed, and he quickly landed beside her. He stretched out his arm and forcefully pulled her into his embrace. "Babies, after the 4th watch, I'll go out tonight. See you all tomorrow. Give out candy tomorrow." Chapter 364. Her small body that was almost cold from the night breeze suddenly fell into a warm embrace. Arba was about to move when his low voice sounded in her ear. "Don't move, Jojo, don't move. Don't push me away again. Jojo. Tell me, where did I go wrong? If you tell me to change, I'll change right away. Don't be like this, Chow Chow. Don't be so depressed. Don't be like this, Chow Chow, Chow Chow." His head was buried in her black hair, stubbornly hugging her and not letting go. Xiao Mu turned around with some difficulty, but before she could raise her head to look at him, her small head was hugged by his hand and tightly pressed into his chest. "Jojo, it's my fault. I made you cry." Prince was depressed and his voice was slightly hoarse. The moment he saw her cry, he wanted to kill himself. How could he make Jojo cry? Arba was finally able to look up. Her small hand pressed against his chin and gently pushed his face up. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "Your friend said I was being unreasonable. Our friendship is over. We're no longer friends." Prince gritted his teeth. He scooped Arba's small body up and hugged her tightly. Arba reached out her small hand and pushed him gently. Prince immediately looked hurt. Don't push me, Jojo. You can't push me away, you can't." When she resolutely pushed his hand away, he really felt that his heart was about to stop and his breathing wasn't smooth. "Don't push him away, Jojo, don't." Arba held it in for a long time. Her small face was red. "I can't breathe." Crown Prince looked down and thought, "Oh, so Jojo pushed me a little further away because she wanted to get some fresh air." The youth subconsciously loosened his arms and loosened his grip on her. When I saw your 2 friends disregard the lives of their teammates, I I thought of some bad things. I didn't control my emotions well. I was a little out of control and even took my anger out on you.
So sorry, Abba said gloomily.
No, it's my fault. I made Jojo cry. I deserve to die.
It's not because of you.
Xiao Mu interrupted his self-reproach before continuing with a sigh. However, didn't that Bailey she say it already? Those were just guards, not teammates. Perhaps in the eyes of those in power like you, the lives of those ordinary guards are not as interesting as the corpse crocodiles. That's true. In such a world, humans might not be able to live like dogs. Abba's lips curled up mockingly. His eyes revealed a cold light as he said faintly, Jojo, if you don't want me to be friends with them, then I won't. From now on, I have nothing to do with them. Is that okay? Emolien hurriedly grabbed the little girl's hand and said.
Abba suddenly raised his little head and stared at him with his dark eyes.
Why? You don't like it. But why are you accommodating me like this? Why? Why? Why do you still have to ask why? Emolien lifted Xiao Mu up at once, and he met her pair of large, round, black eyes. He abruptly pulled her into his embrace, hugging her tightly. Because everything in the world is not as important as Jojo. He rested his head on her shoulder and his low voice came from her hair. Chapter 365. Abba looked at him seriously. It's not good for you to be like this. You've become used to giving in to me. I'll become more willful in front of you. She calmed down and thought about it carefully.
Why was she angry at him for no reason?
It was because she didn't like the lousy teammates he had. She couldn't throw a tantrum at him just because she didn't like his friends.
This was obviously inappropriate. But what was the reason? It was all because he had spoiled her. She should swallow the bitter fruit of her own spoiling.
Xiao Mu lowered her head and reached out to touch her fingers. Emolien lifted her chin and looked at her seriously. Jojo, I don't think Jojo is willful at all. Instead, he felt that this little rascal's heart was deeply suppressed, as if she had a stomach full of secrets that couldn't be stripped away. Abba looked at him quickly and then lowered her head again. Emolien set her down and circled his arms around her body. He lowered his head to plant a soft and gentle kiss on her forehead. It's just that, whether you hit me or bite me in the future, don't throw my hand away again, all right? At that moment, he was really flustered. He was so flustered that he couldn't tell north from south. Her small and soft hand placed in his and pressed his fingers. Okay. Emolien laughed in a low voice. In the past, this word could kill a conversation, but today, it was especially pleasing to the ear. Emolien. Prince's heart skipped a beat. He sat down with the little girl in his arms and looked down at her. Go on. We can't change this dark world. We can't change anyone. But I always think that if we're in the same team, we should trust each other more. Sometimes, maybe it's just a small gesture, but it's enough to let a pitiful person in the endless abyss see a ray of light. Just like me at that time, giving up on a teammate is tantamount to betrayal. It's just like that, it's nothing. Okay. Emolien folded his arms and looked down at her. Jojo, try to trust me completely, okay? No matter how this world changes, I'll give up everything, but I won't give up on Jojo, okay? I will never betray Jojo. Abba turned his little face and looked at him seriously for a while. His little head paused slightly. Emolien couldn't help but burst with joy. As long as his Jojo was willing to try, even if she was covered in 1,000-year-old ice and 10,000-year-old frost, he would spare no effort to break it open little by little, so that she could truly walk out of it. Abba arched his body in his arms and stretched out his hand to yawn. He hadn't slept for 2 days and 1 night, and he had spent so much energy along the way. His little body was really tired. Go to sleep. I'll stay here with you. How did you find this place? The little girl asked, half awake. You didn't hit my senior sister, did you? No, they hit me. Emolien pinched her little hand, feeling wronged. Oh.
At the same time, in the shabby tea house, a group of senior sisters from the Holy Water sect were angrily kicking and beating the dozens of golems in front of them. These golems were all 10th level body cultivators and above, but they didn't fight with them. They didn't react no matter how they kicked or hit them. They just pestered them endlessly and refused to let them leave the thatched hut. The senior sisters were so angry that they all vomited blood. They beat them until their arms and hands hurt, but these golems didn't hurt at all. Chapter 366. When the 3 peak masters returned from inspecting the vicinity, they saw their disciples fighting with the golems. It had to be said that it was a bit funny. The group of Holy Water sect disciples sullenly fought with the golems and kept swinging their hands as they beat them up. Their hands freaking hurt. Bailey Shi, Wei Nanfeng, and the others were sitting outside and watching as if they were watching a show. There was no danger, but the group of girls were flushed with anger. Who did this? Morong Sun pulled out a golem. That wooden fellow hugged her back and didn't fight with her. She could beat him up however she wanted. He just pestered her endlessly and wouldn't let go. It's young Master Mo, Su Shanshan said in exasperation and amusement. We didn't let him go find little junior sister, so he used this kind of vicious move. Morong Sun flicked the golem's head, but before she could kick it, the golem suddenly stopped moving. Morong Sun turned around and saw that the other golems had also stopped moving. F***CK. Chong Yushi angrily kicked the golem in front of her. Why did it stop? Morong Sun was also speechless, but she had broad horizons, so she naturally knew more than the disciples. These golems need to be supported by spirit stones, so they probably ran out of spirit stones. But speaking of which, that D***MN punk was quite generous to be able to take out so many golems at once to deal with them. Master, I'll go wring that punk's head off. The hot-tempered Xue Xiao angrily said. Forget it, let him do as he pleases. Morong Sun shook her head. The D***MN punk was quite attentive to her youngest disciple. It would be good to have him persuade the little girl so that she wouldn't be left alone all the time. Her heart ached just looking at her. Peak Master Morong, after leaving this village, we can reach Shuang City near Shixia Valley after walking on the official road for about 10 days. Since it's still early, we can recuperate in the city for 4 to 5 days. How about this Highness be the host? There was only one city within a radius of 1,000 feet, so it could be imagined how lively it was inside. Wei Nanfeng was anxious to mend his relationship with the little girl, so he was busy roping in the Holy Water sect. We can recuperate for a few days, but you don't have to be the host. Morong Sun waved her hand. Yong Shirong snorted. Isn't that so? The Holy Water sect isn't so poor that they can't afford to raise their disciples. If we're not on the same side, we won't be able to walk together no matter what. You better save your breath. It's best if you take your team and scram now. Why do you keep following us? Don't. Wei Nanfeng didn't get angry, and instead chuckled as he moved forward. 3 peak masters, please give me a chance. Don't worry, I will arrange everything properly. It will definitely allow everyone to rest comfortably. Humph. Everyone snorted in agreement. After a night of silence, the little stoic finally ran back around noon the next day. The Holy Water sect disciples surrounded them in a hubbub and used their daggers to stare at the crown prince, who was holding little junior sister's hand. Junior sister, are you all right? The little stoic shook her head. I've made senior sisters worry. Silly girl. As long as you're happy, nothing else matters. Su Shanshan raised her hand and patted her head. Morong Sun walked over and irritably glared at the crown prince. Put away your golem. Mechanical puppet? The little stoic raised her head and looked at the crown prince in confusion. The crown prince squeezed her small hand and looked back innocently. I didn't do anything, but I was ganged up on by your senior sisters. Chapter 367. He had the nerve to say that. The Holy Water sect disciples spat. Beat his A**s. This guy ran faster than a rabbit and left behind a pile of golems for them to deal with.
If this counted as ganging up on him? Was there still justice in this world?
Abba glanced at the crown prince, who happened to be looking down at her, and winked mischievously at her.
Why do you have so many golems? How many spirit stones did you spend?
Abba curiously looked at the dozens of golems collapsed on the ground. She saw that some of them were grotesquely shaped, and there were all kinds of shapes and sizes.
These are actually all defective products and don't have any attack power.
The crown prince stored these collapsed golems into his inner world and turned to smile at her.
Your big treasure can be considered the second finished product.
I made a lot before, but almost all of them were failures or half-finished products.
Bah! They don't have any attack power, but they beat me until my hand is about to break. Chong Yushi rolled her eyes in exasperation. I gave you all the spirit stones. I don't have any spirit stones.
So it was only enough to stall the senior sisters for a while.
Emolien gently tugged on the little fellow's hand and quietly said, Jojo, if the senior sisters beat me up, you'll save me, right?
Abba nodded her head with certainty. The crown prince was in a good mood, and his eyes curved into crescents as he lightly coughed. Before he could laugh, Murong Sun, who had been eavesdropping on the side, suddenly jumped out and waved her hand with a taut face.
Enough. If there's nothing else, pack up. We'll set off immediately.
After saying that, she snatched Abba's hand and pulled her to her side.
She amiably asked, My disciple, did you sleep well last night?
Everyone. The Peak Master's face-changing skills were getting better and better. Not far from the village, there was a smooth official road. It was naturally much smoother than the swamp-filled land from before. Everyone had abandoned their horses outside the great swamp, so they could only summon mystic beasts with decent running speed. Mystic beasts like tigers, wolves, and leopards were naturally the best. It was not a big problem to ride 2 or 3 more people. Tap, tap, tap. The little girl ran to Su Shanshen's side and reached out to touch the 7-star white tiger's fur. Her 2 black pearl-like eyes rippled with faint love.
Huh. The little girl pinched the white fur on the tiger's head and felt that it was very comfortable to touch.
Little did she know that the others were looking at her and secretly adding in their hearts, Jojo doesn't like cute things or snakes. Jojo likes large birds of prey. It seems that the bigger and fiercer they are, the more she likes them. The 7-star white tiger rubbed against her palm. Come, junior sister.
Su Shanshan jumped onto the 7-star white tiger's back and extended her hand. The little girl patted the white tiger's head and shook her head.
No need, senior sister.
I'll let Newbie lead us. The scene was like a show of wealth.
One summoned Lone Wolf, the other summoned Earthshatter Bear.
The little girl ran back to Emolien and took Newbie out of her pocket.
Newbie, who had been depressed all the way, looked at its little master dizzily. The little girl poked its round body with her finger. Transform.
Newbie flapped its short wings.
Eat and sleep all day. Eat and run all day.
The little girl poked its belly again.
Wei Nanfeng and the others, who had been paying attention to her, could not help but burst into laughter. Little girl, what can this little chick transform into? You're not a level 10 mystic cultivator yet.
Let me lend you a gray wolf to ride. Chapter 368.
Princess Mi of the Shao Kingdom sat on an earth-shattering bear, her hands gripping the black bear's glossy mane as she spoke loftily with her back straightened. She spoke as if she was a level 10 mystic cultivator. In reality, the black bear Princess Mi was sitting on didn't belong to her. It belonged to her personal bodyguard, Gong Sun Yang.
Aber didn't even turn his head and turned a deaf ear to Xiao Mi's words.
It wasn't that this naive Princess Mi of the Shao Kingdom was a bad person. When she saw those rescued women and children, her eyes would also redden in sympathy. However, this princess had always been used to being lofty, so her words were filled with an air of bossiness.
Aber poked Weak Chick's body with his finger.
Hurry and transform.
Xiaomi was about to laugh out loud but was interrupted by a chirp. Her mouth gaped open in shock. The little chick in Xiao Mu's arms flapped its short wings and flew into the air.
Its pair of small wings abruptly transformed into a pair of long, bluish-green wings, whipping up gusts of gales in the air. Other than the holy water sex people watching calmly, even the crown prince couldn't resist raising his handsome brows. His darling Chow was impressive. Although she hadn't signed a contract with a mystic beast, she actually had an ancient Qingwan by her side. At this moment, Wei Nanfeng's jaw dropped. A trace of astonishment flashed across Bai Li's expressionless face. Xiaomi was even more shocked as she looked at the large cyan blue bird circling in the sky. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Why do you have a mystic beast? Xiaomi stared at Aber in astonishment for a moment before shaking her head and saying, Impossible. The law states that no mystic cultivator below level 10 can form a contract with a mystic beast. This is Mo Kingdom's crown prince's mystic beast, right? Aber ignored her and was in no mood to explain other people's doubts. He beckoned to a certain bird that was still circling in the air. Come down. Qingwan flapped its wings and swooped down with a whoosh, scaring Xiaomi, who was sitting on the black bear's back. Her body tilted and she nearly rolled off the bear's back. Princess! The young bodyguard, Gong Sun Yang, hastily rushed forward to support her. You're not allowed to cause trouble. Aber shouted in annoyance. Qingwan quickly flapped its wings and landed in front of her obediently, looking at her with its cute little eyes. Acting cute my ass. Aber endured a fist that was about to land on its head. With a light leap, it was already on Qingwan's back. In a flash, Emolien stood beside the little girl. She smiled and held her little hand. Jojo, give me a ride. Get down here, you stinking brat. Wei something wind has lone wolf. Hurry and go. Murong Sun shouted as she rolled up her sleeves. Baby, run. Your master is here. Emolien pulled Aber's little hand. Before Aber could speak, the cyan phoenix suddenly spread its wings and flew into the sky. With a whoosh, it spread its wings and flew up. In the blink of an eye, it had reached the horizon. This speed was too fast for the people below to catch up. Stinking brat, get back here. Wei Nanfeng's feeble voice was mixed in with Murong Sun's incessant scolding. Senior Murong, this junior's name is Wei Nanfeng. Shut up. Murong Sun grumpily shouted. Her figure flashed and nimbly mounted Su Shanshan's 7-star white tiger. Shanshan, your little junior sister was kidnapped. Hurry and chase after her. Su Shanshan. Aber and Emolien rode Qingwan and flew in front, stopping from time to wait for their master's group. It was not until 10 days later that the group noisily arrived at the foot of Shuang City. From afar, they saw a troop of tribal cavalry slaughtering the screaming and fleeing commoners outside the city gates. Today ends at 5 p.m. See you tomorrow. Chapter 369. Under the trampling of the steeds' iron hooves, several old and frail people were trampled to death. Their chests were flattened, and blood splattered everywhere. Cries filled the air, and the city gate was in a mess. At the same time, the soldiers on the city gate tower gripped their bows until their hands turned slightly blue, and they stood in formation with unsightly expressions. It was not that they did not see the suffering of the citizens outside the city gate, but because of the orders from above, they were not allowed to leave without permission. When Murong Sun and the others approached the city gate, they recalled their mystic beasts to avoid any unnecessary collisions. Currently, everyone was walking forward on foot. When they saw the scene of people being killed and robbed, a trace of shock appeared in their eyes. They had always heard rumors about how chaotic the western border was, but seeing was believing. No matter how much they heard, it was not as real and bloody as what they saw in front of their eyes. The western tribal group had been at war for years, and the citizens all fled to Shuang City. However, Shuang City was not a place that just any cat or dog could enter. One had to pay an exorbitant sum of goods to enter the city, and it could be said that most of the poor citizens flinched at the sight of it. Was there any meaning in these tribal cavalry unscrupulously drawing their swords and slaughtering unarmed citizens? Among the crowd,
The first to react was Shao Kingdom's Princess Mi. This princess shrieked in shock. What are these people doing? Stop. Hurry and make them stop. Quickly go and help. Yes, Princess. Gong Sunyang executed the princess's order without hesitation and led the remaining half of the royal guards toward the tribal cavalry. Gong Sunyang was the first to collide with a tribal clansman riding a tall horse. Gong Sunyang had the strength of a level 10 mystic cultivator, so the moment they came into contact, a mystic energy directly sent that clansman flying from his horse, crashing into the ground with a boom. The spear in Gong Sunyang's hand pierced through that tribal clansman's chest in the next second, killing him on the spot. Princess Mi's other royal guards also clashed with the tribal cavalry, and a series of clanging sounds rang out as their weapons clashed. Doya angrily clenched her small fists. These people are from the Aikido tribe. They're accustomed to doing evil in the western wastelands. Be careful, they have the Eagle battle team. They might even come over to counterattack. Wei Nanfeng stealthily glanced at the little girl. Seeing that her little stoic face didn't show any signs of emotion, he involuntarily coughed dryly. The little girl's heart was too hard to understand. No matter how he tried to please her along the way, the little girl still ignored him. Mo Lien, this inhumane person, always wanted to end their friendship. It was simply indescribable. At this moment, Princess Xiaomi was bursting with a sense of justice as she stepped forward to stop the massacre. However, the little girl didn't have any reaction at all. If they don't dare to resist, then even if we save them now, they won't be able to survive for long in the wilderness, Mo Lien said indifferently. The little stoic silent eyes suddenly brightened. He understood. That's right, that's the logic. Princess Mi's kindness could not be of much use at this moment. This was because most of the people lining up outside the city were young and strong. Disregarding those several elderly people who had long been trampled to death by the horses' hooves, over 100 young and strong men didn't even have the strength to retaliate when faced with 7 to 8 galloping tribal cavalry. These tribal cavalry were only normal people. Chapter 370. Unlike those rescued women and children, they indeed didn't have the ability to fight back when facing a few burly human traffickers. However, these young and strong men in front of him could obviously fight back and save themselves, but they blindly scattered and fled, and were finally caught up and killed on the spot. To be honest, Aber really didn't want to save people who had completely lost their will to fight. However, this kind-hearted Princess Mi made a move like a thunderbolt. Princess Mi only had 50 or so bodyguards left, and 3 or 4 people were injured in the confrontation with the cavalry. After 10 days of trekking, the bodyguards were actually already exhausted, but because of Princess Mi's orders, they couldn't resist and could only brace themselves to fight against the tribe's cavalry. They weren't like Princess Mi, who had the earth-shattering bear as a means of transportation. The bodyguards were all running to Shuang City. Fortunately, they had an expert like Gong Sunyang among them, and it didn't take long for them to completely annihilate the 8 cavalry. However, before they could catch their breath, waves of eagle cries came from the distant horizon. Doya clenched her hands, and her expression changed slightly. The Eagle battle squad of the Aikido tribe is here. On the city gate tower, a middle-aged general with an ugly expression quickly walked forward. Holding onto the city gate railing, the general raised his head to look at the Eagle battle squad flying over from afar, and cursed angrily, "Who are those people below?" They actually attracted the Eagle battle squad of the Aikido tribe. Simply bastards. Quickly inform City Lord Luge. "General, what should we do now?" "Don't worry about anything. As long as they don't endanger Shuang City's gate, let them fight." The middle-aged general sneered, and raised his head to look at the pitch-black Eagle battle squad flying over. There were a total of 12 eagles in the battle squad, and there were 2 to 3 people standing on each eagle's back. As they approached Shuang City's gate, the people on the eagle's back began to throw sharpened bamboo towards the crowd below. Swoosh swoosh. The wind blew past their ears. One of Princess Mi's bodyguards couldn't escape in time, and his left shoulder was pierced by a sharp bamboo falling from the sky. He let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground. Following that,
He was once again pierced in the waist and head by several sharp bamboo, and died on the spot.
Preposterous! Emolien pulled the little girl into his arms. He flicked his sleeves and pushed aside a few sharp bamboos. His handsome face sank all of a sudden. "Are you all right?" He lowered his head and caressed the little girl's face. "Aber, what can happen to me? A bunch of blind barbarians." Yong Shirong threw the bamboo to the side and scolded angrily. "Ah!" Princess Mi was suddenly pressed to the ground by Gong Sun Yang. She felt a faint pain on her scalp as a bamboo stick whizzed past. "Damned bastards!" Princess Mi said angrily, "What are these city guards doing? Why aren't they opening the city gates? I'm going to ask my father to send troops to kill them." "Save it, Princess." Wei Nanfeng sneered. "At this time, the city guards will only sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Why would they open the city gates? Damn it! Even with our status, we can't make him open the city gate?" Princess Mi crawled up and clenched her fists fiercely. She felt that her entire body had been dirted the moment she laid down. Right now, her eyes were no longer her eyes, her nose was no longer her nose. She only felt uncomfortable all over. "Please, Princess. You are the princess of Southern Shao Kingdom. I am the prince of Northern Wei. I don't have anything to do with this Western territory. How can we let them open the city gates in this kind of situation? Tell me." "Ah!" Xiaomi screamed. Chapter 371. While clutching her head where the hairpin fell, Princess Mi was abruptly pulled to her side by the royal guard, Gong Sun Yang, and both of them fell to the ground again. Princess Mi's pure princess heart immediately wanted to explode. Her skirt, her clothes, her exquisite makeup, they were all ruined by these barbarians. "Ah!" Abba poked his head out of Emolien's embrace and silently looked at the princess who was kneeling on the ground and continuously pounding the ground, finding her a bit funny. Princess Mi was actually not annoying, but her behavior was a bit childish at times. In addition, the princess's lofty status caused her to never empathize with other people's feelings. Hence, many times, the words that entered her ears sounded a bit sharp and unpleasant to the ears. However, she was only 16 years old. She was very young and still had a long way to go. This truly was a farce. Morong Sun was a bit angry. In the eyes of normal people, a battle team formed by 12 eagles really seemed very, very powerful. But what was it in the eyes of mystic cultivators? Moreover, aside from Princess Mi's normal royal guards, who didn't have contracted mystic beasts to protect themselves, if they really released all their mystic beasts, with their strength, they could take down the entire Shuang city in 4 hours, let alone this tiny eagle battle team. Aikido people, listen up. If you don't want to die, then hurry and leave. When we counterattack, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. Wei Nanfeng shouted coldly, his mocking voice traveling far into the sky. On the eagle's back, an Aikido young man with a head full of pigtails said with a cold and handsome face, "It was you who killed our Aikido tribesmen." Xiaomi shrieked and cursed, her face and neck red. "A bunch of cowards! Weren't you the ones who attacked first?" Abba turned his head to look at the princess, who had a head of messy hair and was bouncing on the spot, and his mouth twitched. Emolien immediately sensed the little fellow's urge to laugh, and she looked down with a smile in her eyes. Her Jojo was amused by Princess Mi based on this, that Princess Mi who caused a ruckus the entire way didn't look so repulsive anymore. Aikido will win. The Aikido tribe will win. The slogan of the Aikido tribe of the Western Wilderness instantly resounded throughout the sky. Bang! A black gold arrow soared into the sky and struck a male eagle in the blink of an eye. After a tragic eagle cry, the eagle and the 2 people fell from the sky and crashed into the ground, creating a small pit. The eagle didn't climb out, and neither did the 2 people. He didn't know if he was dead or not, but from the looks of it, it was no different from being dead. Princess Mi opened her mouth and turned around to look at the little girl who poked her head out of Prince Mo's bosom and silently lowered her crow repeating crossbow. Morong Sun, Wei Nanfeng, and the others also looked at Miss Chow with twitching mouths. You talk too much. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Why are you talking so much nonsense? The little girl threw Wei Nanfeng a look of disdain. Still shouting into the air, if he had that kind of energy, he would have already been beaten down. What kind of prince is he? What kind of bullshit prince is he? Wei Nanfeng glanced at Emolian aggrievedly. Your wife always dislikes me, this isn't good. The latter rolled her eyes at him and completely ignored him. Wei Nanfeng, you have a wife but no friends. Absolutely, our friendship is over. Chapter 372. Seeing a little girl casually shoot an arrow that could penetrate the eagle's wing, the Aikido leader felt chills in his heart. Before he could react, the others had already made their move. The mystic cultivators with flying mystic beasts released their mystic beasts one after another and flew into the air to attack the eagles. The mystic cultivators without flying mystic beasts also released mystic energy and aimed at the people on the eagles from a distance. Mystic energy bombarded over and quickly beat the Aikido tribe's Eagle Battle Squadron into a sorry state. More than half of the 30-odd Aikido tribesmen were dead or injured. In the end, the leader and a dozen or so Aikido tribesmen were tied up and forced to kneel on the ground. Princess Mi stepped forward with disheveled hair and kicked the leader. Do you submit? No. I submit. The leader of Aikido glared at the princess fiercely with a pair of bell-sized eyes. Doya looked at the leader with some worry. You're the Aikido tribe leader's son, right? From what she knew, the leader of the Eagle Battle Squadron was usually a direct relative of the tribe leader. The Aikido tribe wouldn't take this lying down. After they lost this time, they might even lead a large-scale tribe to attack Shuang City. The Aikido tribesmen had primitive barbarism in their bones and blood, so they wouldn't easily admit defeat. That's right. ACI raised his chin and looked at Doya with a sneer. He shouted sternly, Who are you? Why do you know me? I'll tell you. Let me go immediately. I, ACI, am the third son of the Aikido tribe's tribe leader. I'm the eagle's son. Yas struggled and shouted, If you dare to harm me, my father and my brothers won't let you guys go. Just wait to die. Abba suddenly summoned a feral from his conscious. Emolien's mouth twitched, and she subconsciously let go of the little fellow. As expected, the little fellow leaped forward and viciously smacked the feral on Assie's head. Slap. A crisp sound rang. As expected, Assie's head was incomparably hard and wasn't smashed into watermelon paste. Only a trail of blood flowed down from his braids and down his high nose bridge. The three peak masters reached out to cover their faces. Here we go again. The little fellow seems to dislike people who talk too much. For example, that Wei Nanfeng was completely disliked by her. The little girl went up and kicked him twice. When he fell to the ground, she directly swung her ferrule and smacked him heavily, causing Yas to roll on the ground. The Yasi people looked at this savage little girl in shock. They couldn't believe their eyes. In the western region, men were supreme. Which woman dared to beat up their young master like this? The little girl ruthlessly whipped ACI until he was on the verge of death and unable to speak. Then, she finally stopped and looked at Morong Soon. Master, let's enter the city. Morong Soon nodded frantically. Okay. Wei Nanfeng kept rolling his eyes at the side. Your disciple is about to whip someone to death. Why didn't the master say anything? The little girl ran to the city gate and waved at the stunned general on the city tower. Then, she pointed at the city gate in front of them. Open the city gates. Chong Yushi immediately acted as the little girl's translator. She waved her hand at the general upstairs and shouted out loud. Who are you people? Judging from their savage appearance, a group of 80 or so people actually dared to attack the Aikido tribe. How would the middle-aged general dare to open the gate and welcome this group of plague gods? It would be best if they ran as far away as possible. Chapter 373. A trace of impatience flashed past Abba's eyes. Why is it so troublesome to enter the city? Are these people sick? Do they have to clean up to be nimble? The little girl raised her hand and threw the little chick into the air, and coldly shouted, "Open this gate!" Screech! The azure wings suddenly spread out, and the little chick suddenly transformed into a divine bird, azure luan that covered the sky in front of everyone, scaring the soldiers on the city gate tower until their hearts and lungs started to tremble. Screech! The azure luan circled in the air, and suddenly turned its head, and spat out an extreme Arctic frost slash at the city gate. Everyone stared blankly at it. An icy cold air instantly spread in all directions, and the extreme Arctic frost slash swept across the city gate with a frightening vibrating force. After a loud boom, the ground was cut open by the frost slash, creating a deep crack. A wild ice blade directly landed on the city gate, and immediately cut open a clear white mark on the grand city gate. The general on the city gate tower screamed, "You guys, stop! Stop! Archers, get ready! If you don't stop, immediately release the arrows. Release!" Ah! Before that general finished shouting, he saw the azure luan flapping its enormous wings in the air suddenly charge over. After a sharp screech, it spat out an icy cold air, and immediately wrapped around that pitiful general, melting him into an ice sculpture in a matter of minutes. Wei Nanfeng felt that at this time, he should perform well, and strive to leave a good impression in front of the little girl, so as to prevent his friendship with Emolien from really ending. But before he could shout to the general, the little girl started fighting with someone again, and in a short while, that general was frozen. Wei Nanfeng felt a faint sadness. He still hadn't displayed his negotiation eloquence? Screech! The azure luan circled half a circle in the air, and looked like it was about to turn back and release another attack. A steady shout sounded from the city gate tower, "Everyone, please stop. A misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Open the city gate, immediately open the city gate. Big Green, come back." The little girl waved her hand towards the sky, and spoke concisely and powerfully. The azure luan rapidly swooped down, and when it reached the little girl, it had already transformed into a little chick, and cutely jumped onto the little girl's shoulder. "Well done." The little girl's face was taut as she gave a rare compliment. "Coo." Da-Ching flapped its wings happily. The city gate finally opened. The one who spoke on the city tower was Shuang City's city lord, Lu Gu. After he received the news, he rushed to the gate of Shuang City without stopping. Only then did he prevent a disaster. At this moment, his forehead was covered in sweat. He wiped it with his sleeve and hurriedly ordered people to carry the general's ice sculpture down the city gate tower to welcome this group of fiends. He couldn't help but secretly blame the general for not being tactful. Wasn't this just asking for a snub? With the strength of these people, even the Eagle battle team could be annihilated in minutes. If they wanted to kill them, it would be too easy. They actually didn't allow anyone to enter the city. This was simply courting death. You are all mystic cultivators, right? You have to abide by the rules after entering our Shuang City. You have to pay a fee to enter the city. There are about 80 people in your group, right? Including the ones at the back, there were 100 people. It doesn't need to be too much, just pay. Before the document of Shuang City's entry into the city was finished, he felt as if he was being watched by many people. It was as if those scorching gazes were going to burn a hole in his body. The city lord looked at his subordinates resentfully for failing to meet his expectations. Are you a bunch of idiots? Under these circumstances, you can actually ask people to pay a fee to enter the city? The little stoic looked coldly at that document. Do you want to pay a fee or do you want your life? Chapter 374. Life, 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 life. The city lord repeatedly answered and then kicked that clerk's butt, kicking him to the back of the group. City Lord Luge was nearly 50 years old and had a goatee. He was currently smiling apologetically at Murong Sun and the others. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding, misunderstanding. Everyone has come from afar, so please enter the city to rest. Compensation. The little stoic suddenly said.
The 3 Peak Masters and the Holy Water Sect's senior sisters all twitched their mouths. However, Emolienne couldn't resist laughing out loud. We spent a lot of effort outside the city before we could enter. As compensation, this city lord, do as you see fit. Well said. As expected, the Crown Prince understood her intentions the best. The little stoic nodded her head in agreement and looked up to give the Crown Prince an admiring gaze. Emolienne's eyes were smiling as he met her gaze. Wei Nanfeng was simply speechless. As expected, this couple was bound to be a family. How could they behave so shamelessly in such a logical manner? City Lord Luge wished for nothing more than to immediately pounce on that clerk and give him a good thrashing. Tell me what you're like. You don't know how to adapt to circumstances. You just had to mention payment. Now that you mention it, it made him think of some compensation. He didn't receive the payment and had to be dug out as compensation. How infuriating, City Lord. City Lord Luge wanted to go cry. He quietly asked with a sullen face, "What kind of compensation does this miss want? Our Shuang City citizens also don't have a good life. Food and supplies have always been tight." "Do you have seeds?" the little stoic asked coldly. Yes, we have a lot of seeds." City Lord Luge nodded repeatedly. These days, seeds simply couldn't grow anything in the ground. After failing several times, everyone didn't want to waste the effort to work in the fields again. If they had that time, they might as well go out and hunt. Even if they caught a skinny rabbit in the nearby wasteland, they could at least eat until they were half full. "Give me 1/3 of your seeds. Miss, it's not a problem to give you half of the seeds. It's just that there are quite a lot of seeds." "You," City Lord Luge hastily said, "can your inner world fit?" "You don't have to worry about that." The little stoic waved her hand and then turned to wave at the women and children huddled at the back of the group. "Make proper arrangements for these people." After saying that, he threw a bag of food to the city lord. "They will be the citizens of Shuang City in the future. Don't neglect them." I wouldn't dare. The city lord was a little surprised and hurriedly nodded. In his heart, he had a good impression of this outspoken little girl. In fact, she didn't need to pay for these women and children at all, but she still came according to the rules of Shuang City. She wanted him to treat these people equally after taking them into Shuang City. This girl was cold on the outside but not cold on the inside. It was hard for people to have a bad impression of her. That little girl. Then, our general, ahem, can you restore him to his original state? The city lord hurriedly waved his hand and had people carry the ice sculpture of the general over. Everyone burst into laughter. The shape of this ice sculpture was really unique. Inside the sculpture wrapped in ice, the general lifted his leg and pretended to fly. The long saber in his hand was raised high, and the frightened expression on his face was lifelike. Then, he was sealed in ice. Even his eyelids were covered in a layer of frost. How tragic, this general, everyone thought at the same time. Arbor raised his head to look at Emolienne. The latter knowingly threw out a red flame and melted the ice sculpture in the blink of an eye. Today's 6th watch is over. See you tomorrow. Chapter 375. After the layer of ice fell off, that general returned to his senses with a shudder and started coughing. However, the little stoic's eyes narrowed dangerously, and she abruptly looked up at the Crown Prince again, glaring at him with an unpleasant expression. Emolienne hastily reached out to hold her soft fingers and whispered, "I won't do it again in the future. Really, I promise." Everyone was baffled. They didn't understand what they were talking about. Wei Nanfeng even lowered his head to look at himself, thinking, this time, it wasn't me who angered the little great ant, right? Only Emolienne and Arbor knew what was going on. The reason why Arbor was glaring at him was entirely because he discovered that the Crown Prince controlled 2 types of flames. The purple flames were strong, and the red flames were weak. That's why he definitely wouldn't release the purple flames when he was melting someone's ice, so as to avoid roasting that unlucky general instantly. Just like when he previously dealt with Wei Nanfeng,
he also released the red flames. However, when senior sister Xue Xiao blocked his path, he was so angry that he wanted to release the purple flames. At that time, he really went crazy and wholeheartedly wanted to directly kill senior sister Xue Xiao who was blocking his path. Humph! The little stoic glared at him again. Emolienne hastily tugged at her small hand and repeatedly promised that he wouldn't dare, but he was endlessly afraid in his heart. If Bailey she hadn't stopped him at that time, perhaps he really wouldn't have been able to turn back. Thinking of this, his back broke out in cold sweat. Bailey she actually understood the exchange between the two, but Wei Nanfeng and the rest were bewildered. They didn't understand how the two could communicate with just their gazes. The city lord waved his hand to have people support the general back to rest, and he said to everyone with a smile, "Then let's enter the city first. Come, 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 please come in." The little stoic nodded and walked into the city with the crown prince first. The group of people behind them followed in, and from an angle that the little stoic couldn't see, they all face-bombed or snickered secretly. This won't do. Why did it feel like a group of bandits swaggering into the city? Hey, stop right there! Princess Xiaomi shouted, and Wei Nanfeng didn't even have time to reach out to grab her. Oh my, eldest miss. What mischief are you up to now? Provoking the little stoic for no reason? Didn't he see what kind of people were around the little stoic? They were all a bunch of people who were protective of their own. You'll be beaten up, sister. Even if the heavenly emperor came, no one would be able to help you. Abba turned his head to look at Princess Mi who was running in front of him and asked in a cold voice, "What's the matter?" Xiaomi glared at Abba for a while before she suddenly rushed forward and slapped paralyzed Zhou's shoulder heavily. She placed her hands on her hips and said, "You're called Abba, right? You're not bad. You can be my sister from now on. My name is Xiaomi, Princess of the Southern Xiao Kingdom. You're welcome to visit my Southern Xiao Kingdom after the competition. I'll definitely treat you well." Everyone was dumbfounded. They thought that another bloody conflict was about to happen. In the end, the development of the situation made everyone laugh involuntarily. Girls are all strange creatures. You can befriend them just like that. Weren't there a lot of unpleasant things along the way? Murong Sun decided to rest in Shuang City for a few days. The city lord arranged accommodations for the group of people without hesitation, and then quickly arranged for carts of seeds to be transported over. Peak Master Murong. The city lord of Shuang City finally learned of the Holy Water Sect group's identity, and a very friendly smile immediately piled on his face. He cursed the stupid general to death 10,000 times in his mind. Look at you, you dare to insult anyone. You had a head on your shoulder, yet you didn't even figure out the situation and actually dared to attack a group of mystic cultivators. Chapter 376. The fact that the city gates weren't blasted apart by the mystic cultivators was already giving them face. Is there anything else, City Lord? Murong Sun sat in the wooden armchair and finally leisurely poured a cup of hot tea. Hurrying on the road had truly exhausted her, and her disciples' bodies definitely couldn't take it. Anyway, there was still more than half a month until the competition, so it was fine to rest here for a few more days. Peak Master Murong. I heard from the general's report that, you captured the third son of the Aikido tribe's chief. That's right. Murong Sun nodded and huffed. This punk is arrogant and despotic. We have to properly deal with his bones. Yes, yes, yes. The city lord nodded frantically before looking at Murong Sun with a distressed expression. However, the Aikido tribe is brave and skilled in battle. If the chief knows that his third son is in our Shuang city, he definitely won't let this go. Murong Sun slapped the table heavily. My disciple beat him up. I'll naturally take care of it if something happens. You don't need to worry about this, City Lord. City Lord Luge immediately beamed like a flower. He was relieved with Murong Sun's words. You guys, on the other hand, you're so timid, cowering in this city all day like cowards. I think you should change that god general of yours as soon as possible. He doesn't have any manliness at all. He doesn't even dare to let out a fart when he sees so many civilians being killed outside the city gate tower. He's simply a coward.
Murong soon raised her hand and harumphed before continuing. However, the group of people who were scared witless by the Aikido tribe are even more cowardly.
They couldn't beat a few cavalrymen even with so many people. What do you mean the Western Wastelands produces heroes in large numbers? Scram.
Pff. Yong Shirong spat out her tea.
Lu Yun's mouth twitched.
Eldest senior sister rarely scolded people so much, but once she did, it was endless. City Lord Luge speechlessly lowered his head and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He weakly said, "Peak Master, it's the Aikido tribe, not the Aikido tribe. Who cares about your Aikido or Aikido, let them come. Don't worry and go back. Our holy water sect will stay here for a few more days. I'll take responsibility if anything happens." Murong Sun waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. All right, we need to rest." Governor Luge hurriedly excused himself with an apologetic smile.
When he turned around, he was grinning from ear to ear. What kind of general is that? Hurry up and change him. Get someone brave and resourceful. Seriously. I don't know if he's a relative or not, but he still wants such a coward.
Murong Sun grumbled again. The city lord staggered and hurriedly went back to replace the generals.
2 days later, the Aikido tribesmen were tied up and thrown into the woodshed to fend for themselves for 3 days and 2 nights.
They were so hungry that their stomachs were rumbling and they were about to faint. The door suddenly opened, and everyone couldn't help but shudder when they saw the expressionless little girl who walked in first.
This girl's heart was black and vicious. What was she doing here again? Take them out.
Abba stepped aside and said expressionlessly. Wei Nanfeng bravely stepped forward and grabbed the clan leader's third son, who was glaring at the little girl with a ruthless gaze.
What are you glaring at? You don't want your eyes anymore.
Wei Nanfeng slapped the top of that person's head. ACI struggled with all his might and hooted, "I refuse to accept this."
Refuse my A*S. Even if you refuse to accept this, you have to hold it in.
He freaking roared quite loudly after starving for 2 nights and 3 days.
You'd amen woman, if I didn't use mystic energy, how could I not be your match? ACI raised his head and angrily shouted. Chapter 377.
Just as Emolienne was about to make a move, she was stopped by Arbor.
The little girl asked coldly, "What do you mean?
You still want to fight?
Haven't you been beaten enough? We don't know who's going to beat who yet." ACI straightened his neck, and his pitch-black eyes emitted a wolf-like luster as he continued to hoot. Wei Nanfeng looked at him speechlessly. Did he know how to write the words, "courting death"? Did he know, young man? You're courting death.
A grim killing intent flitted past Emolienne's eyes.
Arbor grabbed the crown prince's hand and turned to look at ACI.
He gestured outside with his finger.
"Come out. Bring them all out." Arbor shouted coldly. Immediately, people dragged out all the Aikido tribesmen from the woodshed.
Assie's gaze was like an untamed wild wolf in the wilderness, emitting a ruthless glint, as if he wanted to tear the little girl apart and swallow her into his stomach.
"Untie him." At the little girl's command, people immediately walked up and untied Assie's bound hands and feet.
ACI was like a ferocious tiger freed from its cage and suddenly pounced in front of Arbor.
The little fellow took a sidestep and immediately flashed behind him. Without saying a word, a fist landed heavily on Yas' back. ACI only felt a burst of pain and staggered forward a few steps. He turned his head and swung his fists fiendishly.
He ran forward a few steps and swung his fists at Arbor's face with all his might.
Following the whooshing of punches, gusts of wind rose. Arbor shifted his position with a sliding step and ruthlessly kicked Assie's back left knee without mercy.
Assie's vicious eyes instantly emitted a severe glint like a hawk's. He fell to the ground with a howl, but before he could stand up, he felt a small foot stomp heavily on his back, nearly breaking his bones in an instant.
Princess Mi, who had heard the news, guffawed with her hands on her hips. Western barbarian, you also have a day like this. You're asking for a beating. Bailey, she raised a brow and watched from the side with his arms crossed. Do you submit? The little stoic stepped on the youth's back. I don't submit. Even though ACI was currently in a sorry state, he still stiffened his neck and threw out these two words. I'm Aikido's young hero. He was the son of Eagle, the son of Lone Wolf. You cannot extinguish the unyielding flame in my heart. The little stoic was bewildered. Whose son are you exactly? Do you admit defeat? The little stoic expressionlessly stomped on his foot again. No. I submit. The young ACI roared. How can I submit to a woman? So what if I'm a woman? Princess Mi raised her eyebrows. The little stoic stomped her foot on his head, scattering this youth's small braids. Cough, cough, cough. Assie's face was covered in blood as he roared angrily. Woman, what's the use of being powerful? In our western wasteland, women are born to be conquered by men. You are no exception. Emolienne was instantly enraged. She pulled the little fellow to her side with one hand, and without any explanation, she lifted the young man up from the ground and punched him in the mouth. This punch landed solidly. The young Yass only felt the corner of his mouth rupture, and blood burst out from his lips. Even his teeth were somewhat loosened. Bastard! You dare to make a move against me? I'll slaughter you. ACI pounced at Emolienne with reddened eyes, but the Crown Prince promptly kicked him to the ground. The Crown Prince then grabbed his loose braid and smashed his fists into that handsome face with thuds and thuds. Wei Nanfeng, who was watching the show from the side, simply couldn't bear to watch. How could this person be this stupid? Pfft. ACI spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 378. ACI glared at Emolienne with reddened eyes. If it was possible, he simply wanted to chew off a mouthful of his flesh on the spot. Don't beat him to death, Auber said apathetically. The youths present all turned to look at her. ACI was wiping the blood dripping from the corner of his mouth as he laughed maniacally. What's wrong, you little girl? You can't bear for me, your older brother, to die? Clean your mouth. Emolienne's gaze hardened, and he kicked out without the slightest hesitation at his chest, breaking two of that unlucky fellow's sternum. He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed onto the ground in a dispirited manner. His bones aren't bad. Keep him as a medicine man, Auber said coldly. She had figured out several kinds of poisons, so she could let this foul-mouthed guy try them out one by one. Although Prince Mo didn't use mystic energy, it could be seen that his physical constitution wasn't weak since he was able to withstand the Crown Prince's blows barehanded and not die completely. Cruel and heartless, treating human lives like grass, was it? Then she would let him personally experience how lamentable it was to bitterly struggle at the lowest rung of society. Wei Nanfeng, Princess Mi raised her head and laughed heartily. As expected of my younger sister, good good good. Let's do it like this. This Western barbarian has a foul mouth. Give him a few more poisons and poison him into a mute. ACI glowered at Princess Mi, but the latter lifted her small chin and rolled her eyes disdainfully at him. You dare to treat our young lord like this? Aren't you afraid that the Aikido cavalry will flatten your Shuang city? An Aikido tribesman roared angrily. Noisy. The little stoic glanced at those Aikido tribesmen in displeasure. Immediately, someone stepped forward and directly stuffed this Aikido tribesman's mouth with a piece of mud that came out of nowhere. That person's face flushed red, and his eyes were filled with rage from being humiliated. Feed him this. Auber handed a small brown square box to one of the guards and said indifferently, Feed him 1 pill every 2 hours. Feed him 11 pills a day. Yes. When that guard received the small box, his arm trembled slightly, and he walked towards the youth ACI without looking sideways. You dare. You bunch of bastards. Just you wait. I, ACI, won't die so easily. I will King survive. Blurg. Yass was punched in the stomach by the guard.
He bent over in pain and subconsciously opened his mouth. A pill the size of a jelly bean was directly stuffed into his mouth. It dissolved in water, and before he could spit it out, the pill had already turned into liquid and flowed down his throat. Yas's handsome face was dark to begin with, and now it was as dark as the bottom of a pot. In the next 3 days, Yas deeply experienced what it felt like to be in hell. There were 24 hours in a day, and he would be in pain for 20 hours. Sometimes, he would feel as if ants were gnawing on his body. Sometimes, he would feel as if his flesh was being cut open by a sharp blade. Sometimes, he would feel as if his heart was being cut open by someone. Hundreds of silver needles were piercing his heart non-stop. Pain, pain, pain. Every morning, the wretched girl would insert needles into his body to relieve the pain as usual. She would even put ice on his forehead to help him heal the broken bones in his chest. Today, when that cool sensation touched his scalding forehead, ACI inexplicably felt his heart tremble. He struggled to half open his eyes and abruptly propped himself up to grab her wrist, gripping it tightly as he looked straight at her. "Let go." The little stoic's voice was terrifyingly calm. "If I don't let go." Slap. The little stoic's hand was as fast as lightning, and a heavy slap landed on the youth's face, directly knocking him sideways onto the bed. Chapter 379. ACI coughed loudly while sprawled on the bed, but his fingers were still firmly gripping the little girl's wrist. When Emolien entered with her hands behind her back, she just so happened to see this scene. She was immediately enraged, and a slender jet-black long sword emitting a jet-black luster abruptly landed in her palm. Leaving no room for objection, she slashed at the youth Assie's left arm. ACI wasn't stupid, so he naturally dodged when he saw the sword glint and rolled inside the bed. As a result, that unhindered sword aura split the entire bed open with a clang. ACI rolled from the inside to the middle and fell into the crack in the bed. He clutched his chest and coughed for a long time, but he still couldn't crawl out. Emolien narrowed her phoenix eyes, and a cold glint flashed past the slender jet-black sword in her hand. She was about to slash at the youth again when Arba grabbed her arm. "Ha ha ha ha." The youth ACI poked half his body out from under the cracked bed and cocked his head at Molien smugly with a nasty expression that said, "Look, the little girl won't let you kill me." "Why are you protecting him?" Emolien turned to look at Arba, her expression unreadable. In that instant, the little stoic seemed to sense the youth Emolien's rage. She glanced at him in bewilderment before expressionlessly saying, "I still have a newly refined poison that I need him to try. It won't be too late to kill him after he's done." Ugh, cough, cough. ACI crawled up from the ground with great difficulty. When he heard the little stoic's emotionless words, a trace of fury flashed through his eyes. "Be *starred woman, you." Cough, cough, cough. Emolien smiled faintly without batting an eyelid. She put away that slender jet-black sword and turned around while holding the little girl's small hand. "Wait a minute." Arba pulled back his small hand and tore off a piece of his sleeve. He threw it on the ground and stomped on it. Behind the two of them, the wolf-like ACI stared fixedly at the girl's back. If his gaze could penetrate her back, there would probably be more than one hole in Xiao Mu's body right now. Emolien's dark phoenix eyes shone even brighter. She happily held the little girl's hand again and smiled. "Why did you tear it off?" "It's dirty." Emolien looked back indifferently, her gaze coldly disdainful at Yassi. Her thin lips parted slightly as she silently muttered, "Don't even think about what's not yours." Yas glared back, but the other party had already retracted his gaze in disdain and left the room while holding the little girl's hand. Cough, 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 cough. A strange pain assaulted him from his chest. Yas took a deep breath and bent down, his gaze fiercely landing on the sleeve that the little girl had stepped on. That sleeve was plain-colored, and after being stepped on, there was an extremely small shoe print on it. Yassi suddenly pounced over like an angry tiger. He clutched the pain in his chest and coughed loudly. He struggled to crawl a few steps on the ground and tightly grasped that piece of cloth in his hand.
The cloth peeked out from between his fingers, and a small piece was tightly clenched in his palm. When Emolien and Auber walked out hand in hand, they happened to see Wei Nanfeng winking at them with a smile. The young couple rolled their eyes at him in unison and ignored him as they strolled past him. Wei Nanfeng, I originally came here to watch a good show. I'm not angry. The two of them had just walked to the main hall when they saw City Lord Luge hurrying over to request an audience with Murong Soon. Aikido's clan leader has arrived. He brought 2,000 able-bodied men from the tribe and the entire Eagle battle squad. They're waiting outside the city gates. Chapter 380. Murong Sun raised her brows. Leave him be. Let him do as he pleases. Let's see if he dares to directly attack the city. More people. TSK. Who were you trying to scare with more people? City Lord Luge wiped the sweat from his forehead and hastily carried out the order. The next day, ACI was brought to the little stoic on his last breath. Although he was so exhausted that he was practically limp and unable to move, his pitch-black, wolf-like eyes still emitted an untamed glint. Why? ACI couldn't help but question the little girl as he looked at her icy profile. The little girl was no more than 12 or 13 years old. Her little face was as cold as snow. From his angle, he could see that she was holding a bottle of transparent liquid and gently shaking it. Her brows were slightly furrowed. Why? ACI roared angrily before the guard next to him punched him in the head. What are you roaring for? Auber turned around and coldly stared at the youth in front of him. After the youth's braids unraveled, his half-length hair that reached his neck was disheveled and scattered around his forehead and ears. His wolf-like eyes emitted a ruthless glint through the strands of hair on his forehead. Why are you treating me like this? ACI clenched his fists and indignantly questioned, The weak are prey to the strong in the western wastelands. What do those normal people who died at the city gate have to do with you? Do you have to use a chicken feather as a token of authority to avenge them? I'm not that senseless, Auber coldly said. Other people's life and death have nothing to do with me. Then why are you punishing me? He couldn't figure it out. He also felt that the girl wasn't someone who liked to meddle in other people's business. She didn't care about those normal people who died at the city gate at all. You were the one who started it. Auber threw down this sentence and didn't want to explain at all. He handed the medicinal liquid in his hand to the guard next to him. Give it to him to drink. This is the last time you test the medicine. If you're lucky enough to survive this time, then your life isn't meant to end yet. We'll write off all past debts. After the little stoic icily said this, she turned around and left. ACI didn't understand the reason, but he felt pain in his heart. 2 guards held him down, and he couldn't stop struggling. His gaze was tightly locked onto her chilly back for a long time. Why? Do you think you can cut off all ties with me like this? Don't even think about it. Damned girl, come back here. Who the F***ck am I to write off my debt with you? Get back here. ACI angrily kicked his legs and glared at the back of the girl's head with a pair of fiendish eyes. One of the guards was almost unable to hold down the struggling youth. 2 more guards ran over from the side and hurriedly forced him to kneel on the ground. 4 of their hands desperately pressed down on his hands and poured medicine into his mouth. Yas choked on the medicinal liquid in his mouth and coughed loudly. Tisk. Wei Nanfeng walked over and lightly laughed. I say, why are you like a stupid bear, so silly and naive? Wei Nanfeng dragged a stool to sit in front of ACI and said with a chuckle, When you ran over with a troop of war eagles to throw pointed bamboo at Peak Master Murong and the others, you were already destined to be enemies with the little stoic. Do you still not understand? Ah! ACI roared angrily and suddenly pounced forward, as if he wanted to directly bite Wei Nanfeng's throat. Wah! Wei Nanfeng jumped up and hastily kicked away the stool to evade. He commanded the guards, Hold him down, hold him down. He really is a mad dog, biting everyone he sees. Chapter 381. For to 5 bodyguards swarmed forward and pressed ACI to the ground again. However, they didn't need to do anything else. The poison in Assie's body had already flared up, and he was powerless to resist. The youth curled up on the ground, his limbs shivering and twitching non-stop. A layer of frost covered his hair, eyebrows, and even lips. "Watch him." Wei Nanfeng quickly ran out and stood under the scorching sun before his entire body couldn't help but shudder. He didn't know what kind of poison the little stoic used on him, but the poison flared up so quickly that even ACI, who was as strong as a bull, was instantly knocked to the ground. He turned to look and saw the little girl sitting under a tree with a thick book on her knees. She was currently reading with her head lowered. Her lowered eyes were peaceful and serene. How could anyone tell that she was the vicious little girl from earlier? A brown square wooden box was placed on the short table in front of her, and steam was rising from 3 cups of tea next to it. The 3 peak masters drank tea and chatted, occasionally glancing at the little girl flipping through the book. Disciple. This book was sent over by the city lord just now? Murong Sun raised her brows. Her disciple's speed at flipping through the book was a bit too frightening. Her eyes didn't linger on the page for more than 3 seconds before she turned the page. What the hell could she see from flipping through the book like this? Yes. Arbor nodded. Just as she finished flipping through the book, Emolien walked over. Ignoring Peak Master Murong's piercing glare, Emolien pulled the little girl up. He glanced at the book on the corner of the short table and slightly raised his slender brows. "Jojo, let's go. A batch of the ebony you wanted is here." "So fast?" The little fellow's eyes brightened. "Come back soon. We're about to start eating, so don't talk for too long." Peak Master Murong quickly shouted. Emolien lightly harumphed and hooked the little fellow's soft fingers, directly dragging her away. "Your master is really annoying." Halfway there, the youth leaned close to the little girl's ear and whispered. Arbor turned around and glared at him, but the youth chuckled in return. "Jojo, did you finish reading the medical book the city lord gave you?" "Yes, I have." The little girl replied unhappily. She didn't know why, but when she flipped through the pages, she felt that the book was extremely familiar. The content of the book was very basic, as if she had flipped through it countless times, and it was entangled in her heart after countless twists and turns. She really wanted to know how many medical books and poison collections she had read. Did she really read all the medical books and performed acupuncture no less than 1,000,000 times? Otherwise, why would she be able to concoct the clear radish pill and even refine the clear radish poison just by looking at the clear radish flower? What was given to ACI was none other than the most potent poison of the Viridian vine. Compared to the 9th grade Een poison pill that the princess had tried to feed him, the toxicity of the Een poison pill was worlds apart. I remember that the Imperial Physician Building has quite a number of such books. I'll get someone to sort them out and send them to you in 2 days. Arbor nodded repeatedly. She only needed to borrow it for a while before returning it. "Jojo, come and take a look. Is this ebony cut into this size suitable? If not, I'll get someone to make a new one." The Crown Prince picked up a small piece of ebony and placed it in the little girl's hand, looking at it with a smile. "It's pretty good." Arbor touched the ebony piece in her hand and nodded. At the same time, far away in Guanlon City, the old Imperial physician in charge of the Imperial Physician Building suddenly sneezed while holding a medical book. He hurriedly got up and closed the door to the Imperial Physician Building, then turned around and picked up the medical book like it was a treasure. He used his sleeve to wipe off some dust on the book. Chapter 382. Arbor stored the ebony into her only purple storage talisman, thinking that she had to draw some talismans tonight. This purple talisman had 4 cubic meters of space and could be used 400 times. Even without the paradise, it was enough for her for the time being. The previous batch of low-level talismans had been sent to the Crown Prince to be auctioned at Morning Sunlight Pavilion, so she really didn't have many talismans that could be of use to her now. She planned to draw some intermediate-level talismans to replenish her talisman reserves in case she needed them in the future. That night,
Auber toiled by candlelight and drew 100 intermediate-level blue storage talismans. 6 cubic meters of any storage space could be used 200 times each. Living things still couldn't be used. Afterwards, she drew quite a few intermediate-level auxiliary talismans, including speed, strength, immobilization, dizziness, drowsiness, wall crossing, repeat talismans, and so on. She drew more than a dozen of each and stored them properly. When she looked up, half the night had already passed. She had drawn a total of 200 talismans, which was quite a harvest. Her talisman drawing speed also increased slightly. Auber sat at the table and took out 2 pieces of ebony to ponder. She thought, I wonder if this talisman brush can also leave a mark on ebony. Her talisman brush was a bit magical. Normal talisman practitioners needed a cinnabar talisman brush to draw talismans, but she only needed 1 talisman brush to draw talismans. However, this ebony wasn't as soft as talisman paper. She just didn't know. Just as she was thinking, the small golden bead at the tip of the cinnabar brush suddenly lit up. Auber's small hand tilted slightly and immediately drew a light gray mark on a piece of ebony. She quickly reached out to touch that talisman brush. When she touched the brush tip, she couldn't help but be startled. The originally soft brush hairs had all gathered together at some point, and the brush felt a bit sharp to the touch. This was truly amazing. This talisman brush was originally snatched from her apparition. Could it be? This thing was also a gift from the golden talisman jade tome? When she thought of this, the little stoic's mouth twitched unconsciously, and she found it a bit funny in her heart. She tried to continue drawing on that piece of wood she had drawn on, and a few minutes later, she completed an intermediate-level blue summoning talisman. She stared at that intermediate-level blue summoning talisman drawn on ebony, and her eyes suddenly brightened. The talisman power doubled again. The level of talisman power directly affected the duration of the talisman. Back then, the blue summoning talisman drawn on talisman paper could be used for 6 days. Now, this talisman drawn on ebony could be used for 12 days. Although the Qing Yuan she summoned disregarded the rules of time from the very beginning, there was no guarantee that if this summoning talisman was given to someone else, it would follow the rules of time. That's right, I can let the Crown Prince try it out tomorrow. She hurriedly drew 2 more storage talismans. Not long after, a blue light flashed, and 2 intermediate-level blue storage talismans were completed. 12 cubic meters of storage space can be accessed 400 times each. How amazing! The fine-grade blue talisman drawn with ebony was much more spacious and easier to access than the peerless grade purple talisman she had drawn with talisman paper. She still had a lot of ebony and could draw another Xian gathering glyph array. The little girl was overjoyed. After blowing out the lamp and resting, she lay on the bed and hugged the newly drawn ebony talisman. She tossed and turned happily for a while before falling asleep in a daze. Early the next morning, when she saw Emolienne in front of the dining hall, the little girl ran over in high spirits. She tugged at Emolienne's hand and said, "Come with me." Affected by the little girl's happy mood, Emolienne followed her to the open courtyard with a smile and casually teased, "What is it, Jojo? You missed me this much after not seeing me for one night?" Chapter 383. Wei Nanfeng, Bailey Shi, Princess Mi, and the others just happened to follow over and were caught off guard by the Crown Prince's display of affection. Their hearts were truly stifled. Auber looked up at him, staring at him with large beady eyes for a long while before stuffing him with an ebony talisman and saying in a crisp voice, "Try it." The Crown Prince lowered his head to take a look. The ebony talisman script was intricately intertwined. Only an expert would be able to understand it. "Try opening the talisman." Seeing that he didn't respond for a long time, Auber impatiently pulled his 5 fingers over and lowered his head to nibble on his index finger, squeezing a drop of blood onto the blue summoning talisman. The Crown Prince was immediately stupefied on the spot. His entire person had completely turned into a wooden stick, stupefied as he stood there motionlessly. He only felt the little fellow's lips and teeth landing between his fingers. It felt limp and numb, sending ripples through his heart. The originally tranquil lake water in his heart seemed to boil as it surged violently. "Oh my, miss, you flirted Crown Prince Lien silly." Wei Nanfeng pursed his lips as he stood on the side. Suddenly, a roar sounded in his ears. When a snow leopard with a pure white body, for hooves stepping on snow, and all of its fur standing on end abruptly landed in front of everyone, stomping down several nearby low shrubs, everyone present gaped as they stared dumbfoundedly at the big fellow in front of them. This, who was this? What did he summon a mystic beast for? Emo Lien didn't regain her senses until she heard the snow leopard's roar. She looked up and saw a snow leopard with a robust figure looking at her. It gracefully walked to her side and half-crouched next to her slender legs. Aba's round eyes stared fixedly at that snow leopard, completely unable to tear her gaze away. Why was it that she always screwed up when she tried to summon and couldn't summon such a mighty snow leopard? How could the Crown Prince summon such a charming leopard on his first try? The little stoic ran in front of the snow leopard and extended a small hand, rubbing the snow leopard's large, furry head with an infatuated expression. Afterwards, she actually flipped over and climbed onto the snow leopard's back. The snow leopard turned its head and casually glanced at her. Then, it retracted its gaze and continued to lie quietly beside Emolien's legs. Wei Nanfeng's eyes almost popped out. "Lien, what are you doing? Where did you get this snow leopard? Is it your mystical beast?" Bailey she crossed his arms and softly scolded, "Idiot." Without waiting for Wei Nanfeng to turn around to glare at him, he coldly said, "Didn't you see the summoning talisman in his hand?" Summoning talisman? It was as if Wei Nanfeng had heard some legend. He opened his eyes wide and ran forward, wanting to take the wooden piece from the Crown Prince's hand. The Crown Prince retracted his hand, avoiding his grasp, and glared at him. "Stingy." Wei Nanfeng mumbled, "I already know that after this talisman is activated, this talisman is useless to others. I just want to take a look." The Crown Prince didn't even want to let Wei Nanfeng take a look and directly put the ebony talisman into his clothes. He turned around to rub the little girl's head with a grin and led her down from the snow leopard. "You must be hungry. Go eat breakfast first." Aba turned around to glance at the large snow leopard, then turned around and stuffed another intermediate-level blue storage talisman inscribed with ebony into the Crown Prince's hand. "This storage talisman has more space and access times than the one I gave you before. In the future, use this storage talisman." Wei Nanfeng suddenly exclaimed, "You're a talisman practitioner." On the side, Bailey she glanced at him irritably. Didn't he already know that the little girl was a talisman practitioner the first time he met her? Chapter 384. Was there a need to make such a big fuss over nothing? Bailey she swept a glance at Wei Nanfeng. Heavens! He was actually disliked by a talisman master. Wei Nanfeng only felt a dark cloud hovering above his head, and his chest felt so stifled. A 12 to 13-year-old talisman master could draw the legendary summoning talisman? What kind of standard was this? This was definitely a great talisman master in the midst of maturing, the kind with limitless prospects. However, he fell out with her on the first day. Wei Nanfeng had a mournful face as he followed beside Bailey she dejectedly. He said in a low voice, "I thought that the talisman array she used when she leapt into the air to fight with you that day was just me seeing things. No matter how I thought about it later, I felt that it was impossible for a 12 to 13-year-old little girl to be able to draw talisman matrices in this world. I just..." Deceiving himself like this, he brushed this matter aside and didn't think about it anymore. Thinking about it now, he couldn't help but feel that he was a bit laughable. Princess Mi also recovered her wits and said with an incredulous expression, "I've only heard of that family in Guanlon City, the only talisman patrician family on our Seekong planet. The number of big and small talisman masters is only a total of 100 people. Among them, there are also many who are over 60 years old. TSK, this younger sister of mine is incredible. She's already a talisman master at such a young age." Wei Nanfeng turned his head around and looked at Princess Mi resentfully. He felt that anything he said now was like using a knife to stab his heart.
What are you looking at me for? I also can't help you ease your relationship with the younger sister. Princess Mi harumphed, then smiled as she pulled on Bailey Shi's arm and called out gently, Big brother Shi, let's go eat breakfast now. Bailey Shi's arm shook lightly and brushed away her approaching fingers. Then, he leaped onto a tree, and after a few leaps, his figure was nowhere to be seen. Wei Nanfeng speechlessly glanced over there, then turned to look at Princess Mi, who was about to flip out, and hurriedly waved his claws and swiftly slipped away. Princess Mi was still about to say the word, go, when she saw that Bailey Shi had disappeared without a trace. She was so angry that she stomped her feet and chased after him, shouting, Bailey Shi, come back here. When Emolien and Auber walked over hand in hand, the person who attracted the attention of the Holy Water Sect's senior sisters was not the two of them but the large snow leopard following behind them. The snow leopard's eyes were jet black, and its fur was glossy and shiny. As soon as it followed the two in, it immediately took up most of the space in the dining hall. Everyone suddenly felt that the space had become much narrower. Many pairs of curious eyes fell on the snow leopard. Junior sister, is this a side dish? Chong Yushi's words made many of the senior and junior sisters spit out their food. The brains of the people from the second peak were indeed different. Who would eat such a big snow leopard? Weren't you afraid that you would become a side dish in the snow leopard's mouth? When Murong Sun, Yong Shirong, and Lu Yun entered, they saw this scene. The group of disciples stopped eating and all gathered around the snow leopard to watch. The snow leopard was a bit impatient from being surrounded by the senior sisters. It wanted to roar, but when it caught the crown prince's indifferent glance, it instantly stifled its roar. What were a bunch of bumpkins looking at when they surrounded it? Is there really such a miraculous item like summoning talismans? Chen Hanzi whispered. If it's as junior sister said, then if we can summon mystic beasts in the future, then wouldn't that break the rule that mystic cultivators can only have one contracted beast? When Xue Xiao thought of this, her eyes brightened. Chapter 385. Auber nodded. That should be the case. Little junior sister, please give us a summoning talisman. Please give us a summoning talisman. All the senior sisters said in unison, eagerly requesting talismans. After breakfast, I'll draw one for each of you. Okay. All the senior sisters' cheers nearly broke through the roof. I also want one. I also want one. Princess Mi, who couldn't fit into the crowd, was pushed to the back by everyone and kept jumping up and down while raising her hand. Okay. Auber didn't decline since it was as easy as lifting a finger. All right, aren't you going to eat after asking for talismans? Come over if you're done. Yong Shirong shook her head with a smile and called out to the disciples. Everyone was eager to request talismans and didn't have the mood to eat breakfast. They hastily finished their breakfast and looked impatiently at their little stoic junior sister. Auber took out 30 pieces of ebony and a gold-beaded talisman pen, quickly drawing talismans. Everyone didn't dare to disturb her and only gathered far away to watch her work without blinking. However, they felt that their little junior sister's talisman drawing speed was quite fast. From what they knew, no matter how talented a talisman practitioner was in that family in Guanlon City, it was impossible for them to draw talismans so quickly. Their little junior sister was truly an extraordinary little genius. After less than an hour, Auber distributed the summoning talismans to all the senior sisters and Princess Mi, who came up to ask for a talisman. Everyone held the ebony talismans in their hands and felt that the talisman scripts drawn on the ebony pieces were exquisite and profound. They flipped through them lovingly while carefully listening to their little junior sister's words. The summoning talisman's time limit was 12 days. This was truly beyond everyone's expectations. From what they knew, that family's residence in Guanlon City had an intermediate-level summoning talisman that could summon for 6 days. Everyone was chatting enthusiastically and abnormally lively when City Lord Luge hastily walked in with his people. Peak Master, Peak Master. Luge hastily bowed to everyone and said with a chuckle, Aikido's clan leader sent someone to deliver a letter requesting for peace, requesting us to release his third son.
He's also willing to pay compensation in exchange for the lives of his clansmen.
Let's go take a look.
Murong soon waved her hand, and everyone brought out the Aikido people from the woodshed and escorted them to the city gate tower.
Where's our young master? Where's our young master? The Aikido people roared hoarsely. What are you being so long-winded for? Let's go.
The crowd angrily dragged the dozen or so Aikido people up the city wall. At the same time, Chiao Mu walked into the room where the youth, ACI, was imprisoned. She creased her brows as she looked at the youth who was lying on the bed in a sorry state, but his pair of wolf-like eyes were still fixated on her. To be able to survive such a strong poison from a small bottle, there must be something strange about this young man's body.
You can't kill me. I am the eagle of the wilderness. I am the destined future overlord of the West. I cough, cough, cough. His lips were dry and his throat was extremely dry. It was difficult for him to speak, but his sharp gaze followed the little girl's movements. I'll chop off your head and see how you continue to boast. Emo Lien sneered. Yas glared at Emo Lien. You're not a hero of the wilderness if you're afraid of death. Hold him down.
Aber didn't waste words and directly ordered several guards to hold Yas down on the shabby bed. He took out a silver needle and pricked one of his fingers. He carefully examined his blood. Move him to the city gate tower.
Aber turned around and left after saying this.
Dear friends, after more than 4 months, the free period is about to end. The release date has been confirmed to be tomorrow.
The author's stoic Chow is going to start collecting fees.
Dear friends who haven't finished reading, please hurry up and read. Tomorrow, the author will reverse the cycle and charge a fee for some of the previous free chapters.
I hope that dear friends will support me. I'll release an explosive update on the day of the release.
I'll shamelessly ask for a wave of tips, tomorrow. Tip me on January 2nd, and help me increase my subscriptions. Dear friends who like me, please subscribe to the author in full.
Thank you, everyone, for following me all the way. I hope that you will continue to accompany me on my path of growth. Moi.
The fee is usually 5 book coins per 1,000 words. The price is automatically set by the system, so every author won't make a mistake. To avoid any doubts, I'll explain it first.
I hope that everyone can understand.
Thank you.
Chapter 386.
The cold poison in his blood is gradually weakening, as if he has a natural antitoxin.
Aber pursed her lips. Perhaps his identity isn't that simple. Emo Lien raised her brows slightly.
She thought of something, and her gaze darkened. When the two of them reached the city gate tower, they saw that half of the sky was occupied by the Eagle battle team. Below the city gate, more than 2,000 Aikido tribesmen were shouting and cursing at the city lord and the others. Aber had people lift ACI up and push him onto the city wall. A sharp dagger instantly appeared in her hand, and she held it against Asi's neck. Aikido tribe's clan leader Ahan stared at them with sharp eagle eyes and shouted, "What do you want to do? Our Aikido has already yielded so much and even handed over a letter of peace. Hurry up and release my son." "What's the use of a letter of peace?" Murong Sun coldly said. "This peak master heard that you Western Wastelands people value oaths the most. How about this, you write an oath right now, stamp it with your and your entire tribe's blood seal, and hand it over. This way, even if you want to go back on your word in the future, the law of heaven will punish you on our behalf."
Dream on. All of the able-bodied men in the Aikido tribe started to clamor.
Without another word, Aber threw half of Asi's body over the city wall and looked like she was going to push ACI down the city gate tower. This shocked the clamor below into abruptly stopping. Ahan's voice trembled, and he uncontrollably clenched his fists. He shouted sternly, "Little miss, please have mercy.
I advise you to think clearly before acting. Asi's identity isn't someone you can afford to provoke.
If anything happens to him, the entire Shuang city and the entire Western Wastelands won't be able to compensate for his honorable life."
So much nonsense.
Aber forcefully pushed,
and ACI plummeted down with an ashen face. Only one long leg was left dangling inside the city wall. His entire body was basically in a plummeting state, and his appearance was quite unique. Okay. We agree. We agree to anything. Where did this vicious little miss come from? She didn't leave any leeway for others to consider. Ahan's eyes were bloodshot, but there was nothing he could do. Yas was Aikido's weak spot. He definitely couldn't let anything happen to Yas. No one could bear the consequences. When the oath was handed up to the city tower, City Lord Lu Gu received it with both hands. He was so excited that he could not control himself. Great, the oath was effective. Just as Peak Master Morong had said, if the Aikido tribe members dared to go back on their words, they would be the first to receive the punishment of the heavens. None of them would be able to escape. Many thanks to Peak Master Morong. Many thanks to everyone for your help. The city lord was almost crying tears of joy. From now on, their Shuang city's days should be better. Morong soon waved her hand and had people escort ACI and his group out of the city. While the young ACI was being dragged away, his wolfish eyes were still glaring fiercely at Abba, as if he wanted to imprint her small appearance in the depths of his eyes and engrave it in his mind. Just you wait. Damned girl. I will come back for you. Just you wait. The young man yelled fiercely. Everyone glared at him. However, the little stoic was bewildered. Who has the patience to wait for him? Pfft. Wei Nanfeng broke into laughter as he looked at the displeased Emolien. Wei Nanfeng winked at him and quietly teased, "Looks like your little miss hasn't been enlightened yet. Your road, TSK, is still very long." Chapter 387. Emolien didn't say anything and just coldly watched Asi's back as he was dragged away. Yossi was finally carried away by the Aikido tribesmen. Even at the foot of the city gate tower, that pair of malicious eyes was still directed toward the top of the city gate tower. What an annoying guy. Don't let him see him again. Morong Sun smiled and held her youngest disciple's hand. We've pretty much settled everything, and it's enough to rest for so many days. Let's enter Shixia Valley this afternoon. Shixia Valley was adjacent to Shuang City. Outside of Shuang City was its territory and bordered the southwest, but it didn't belong to the jurisdiction of anyone in the southwest. Its status was rather aloof. Shixia Valley and Celestial Medicine Valley were equally famous, commonly known as the Two Valleys. Both of them were praised by the common people for standing aloof from worldly affairs, and their reputations were extremely good. The competition this time involved the 3 sects and 5 factions, so it was naturally best to hold it in a neutral land like Shixia Valley. Morong Sun's group left Shuang City under the respectful escort of City Lord Luge and the others. An hour later, they arrived at Shixia Valley's mountain gate. Shixia Valley was enveloped within an expanse of luxuriant flowers and green trees. The entire valley was in the shape of a gourd. The mouth of the valley was narrow, but it was said that the interior of the valley was a completely different world. The environment was extremely beautiful. There were a total of 12 disciples guarding the mountain gate. They were very refined and courteous in their treatment of people. It could be seen that Shixia Valley's upbringing was extremely good. When the 2 chief disciples saw Morong Sun and her group arrive, they hastily went up to greet them and cupped their hands in greeting. "Greetings, fellow cultivators." Morong Sun said with a smile, "We come from the Holy Water Sect. I'm Morong Sun. So it is Peak Master Morong who has graced us with his presence. We did not know and have neglected you. Please forgive us." The 2 head disciples of Shixia Valley hurriedly bowed again. Everyone is too polite. Purple Firmament Gate's eldest disciple, Bailey Shi. Heavenly Tao Sect's second disciple, Wei Nanfeng. The 2 princes reported their sect's identity and cupped their fists in greeting towards the disciples of Shixia Valley. Please invite them in. The people from the 2 sects have already arrived yesterday. Everyone, please follow us. When they entered the valley, they saw a gurgling stream, green trees, and all kinds of precious flower species planted on both sides of the path. The fragrance of the flowers assaulted their nostrils. Shishya Valley is indeed a paradise. The scenery is delightful. Everyone praised. When they passed by a 9-ringed corridor carved out of white jade, they came face to face with two people. They were dressed in grey robes that covered their entire bodies, making them look like lepers. Those two are friends from Ghost Faction. The Shishya Valley disciple raised his hand and introduced them, nodding in greeting at the two Ghost Faction disciples. Those who walked different paths could not make plans together. Among the 5 factions, only the Purple Firmament faction was worth befriending. The other 4 factions were truly unsightly. The Holy Water Sect disciples were naturally unwilling to interact with the demons and monsters of the Ghost Faction, so they immediately followed Murong Sun and filed past the 2 Ghost Faction disciples without another word, not even bothering to greet them. The 2 Hellgate disciples raised their heads slightly. The one on the left had a petite figure and looked like a woman. Her gaze instantly fell on Emolien. To be precise, that piercing gaze was fixed on the little stoic beside Emolien. Arbor was currently raising his small head and whispering to Emolien beside him. When everyone walked past the 2 Ghost Faction disciples, nothing happened. It was only when the little stoic passed by that young girl from the Ghost Faction instantly attacked. Her 5 faintly black fingers caught Arbor off guard and clawed at his small face. If she was caught red-handed, the little girl's fair and frosty face would probably be ruined. Chapter 388. Inside the main hall of the Aikido tribe. The youth ACI was carried and placed on a thick tiger skin felt, his malicious gaze fixed on the row of people kneeling below. This old servant failed to protect his master. Please punish me, young master. Ahan knelt on one knee in front of the youth with his head lowered. Father. ACI hurriedly got up, but he was somewhat weak. What are you doing? Are you all dead? Why aren't you helping my father up? I've already said that no matter what, you're the father who raised me. There's no need to be so courteous. Ahan stood up, and a touched glimmer flashed through his eyes. He nodded and said, ACI, I've already examined your body. I've already asked the doctor to check your body, and there's nothing wrong with you. Although you were poisoned, when you left earlier, Master had already planted a poison-repelling fruit in your body, which can protect you from the corrosion of hundreds of poisons. However, that girl is vicious, and the poison she used on you is unusual. Even if you have a poison-repelling fruit in your body that can neutralize a lot of the poison, there's still a small amount of residual poison that can't be completely eliminated in a short period of time. Ahan sternly said, during this period of time, don't run out again. Stay in the tribe and properly recuperate from your injuries and completely remove the poison. ACI nodded. A tall and sturdy man suddenly stood up and cupped his hands in a low, muffled voice. Young master. This subordinate requests permission to bring a group of people to infiltrate Shuang City overnight. Even if we can't touch a single finger of the people in the city, this subordinate and the others can secretly eliminate that audacious girl. To repay young master for the humiliation you suffered on the city wall today. ACI abruptly straightened his body and glowered at the sturdy man. He tightly clenched his back teeth and angrily said, Don't you dare touch a single strand of her hair. What did I do wrong? Was written all over the sturdy man's dumbfounded face. This subordinate devoted himself to eliminating an enemy for young master, so why did he provoke young master's anger? It's best if you don't meddle in this young master's affairs. ACI flew into a rage out of humiliation and threw a cup at them. Scram, scram, scram. All of you, scram. Ahan hastily signaled the 2 maids on the side with his eyes and hastily called for everyone to withdraw. 2 maidservants stepped forward, trembling with fear. They knelt beside Assie's bed and said softly, Young master, we will help you change your bandages. ACI coldly stared at the 2 maids and waved his hand for them to come forward. There were countless wounds of various sizes on Yasa's body. The bone fracture in his chest had yet to heal, and the various external wounds needed to be regularly changed and reapplied with ointment. One of the maidservants held the ointment in her hand, while the other gently helped him untie the cloth that was wrapped around his wound, dipped it in the ointment, and applied it to his wound. When the ice-cold ointment was applied to his forehead, Assie's eyes suddenly opened wide and emitted a cold light. He abruptly reached out and firmly grasped the maidservant's hand. The maidservant was flustered and blushed. She stole a glance at Yossi and sweetly whispered, "Young master? Woman, this young master will definitely conquer you." ACI glared at the maidservant with an ominous glint in his eyes. He pushed her onto the bed and viciously tore at her clothes. The other maidservant holding the ointment crawled back a few steps with a red face. She lowered her head and didn't dare to take another look. "Young master, this servant can do it herself. There's no need to trouble young master." The maidservant shyly looked at Assie's handsome face. Just as she was about to undress herself, ACI kicked her to the ground. Chapter 389. The maidservant fell to the ground with a thump and frantically gathered her tattered clothes. She hurriedly crawled back 2 steps and knelt on the ground, not daring to raise her head as her shoulders trembled. "Your status is lowly and despicable. Ugly. Slut. Simply impudent. You dare to climb onto this young master's bed. You want to seduce this young master's pleasure? Simply indulging in fantasy." ACI strode off the bed with his hands on his hips like an angry lion as he angrily shouted outside, "Where are the Warhawk guards?" "Young master." Outside the door, several armored guards rushed in and stared covetously at the woman who was lying limp on the ground and trembling all over. "Drag her out of here. Behead her in public." ACI roared. "No. Young master. No, don't. Young master. It's not that this maidservant is bold. Just now, young master, it was you who did this maidservant." "No, young master. This maidservant really didn't climb onto the bed on purpose. Young master, please investigate thoroughly. Young master, please investigate thoroughly." The maidservant trembled all over as 2 guards grabbed her by the arms and dragged her along the ground. Her legs kept kicking the ground as she screamed. More than half of the tribe was alarmed. The men and women all came out of their tents and looked in surprise at the young maidservant who was dragged out of the young master's tent. Her clothes were messy and tattered, and a few strips of cloth fell loosely on her body. It was very difficult to cover her snow-white skin. The women gathered together and curled their lips in mockery as they coldly looked at the pitiful woman being escorted to be executed. What an idiot, daring to seduce young master. She deserves to die. Isn't that so? Everyone knows that young master is notoriously picky and hard to serve. She actually deluded herself into thinking of flying to the top. Simply laughable. The moment the head fell, the woman's screams and cries also disappeared. ACI stood in the tent with his hands on his hips, his cold gaze falling on the other maidservant who was kneeling on the ground with her head bowed. She was trembling and didn't dare to say a word. "What's your name?" "Guing." ACI coldly stared at the maidservant named Guing. "You also think that this young master is cruel, heartless, and unreasonable?" Guing hurriedly shook her head, but her trembling shoulders had already revealed the deep fear in her heart. "What are you waiting for? Come here and continue applying medicine for me." ACI retracted his cold gaze and turned around to sit on the edge of the bed. Guing hurriedly crawled a few steps forward. Without looking sideways, she stretched out her hand to apply the ointment. "Women, the next time we meet, this young master will definitely conquer you. Definitely." Assie's wolfish eyes narrowed slightly as he lowered his head to look at the maidservant who was applying ointment on his chest. That extremely aggressive gaze made Gu Ying's heart tremble slightly. She steadied her wrist with all her might and continued to apply medicine to the youth without losing her patience. "My Joe's section break, I've long heard that Shixia Valley scenery is extremely beautiful. Now that I've seen it today, it truly lives up to its reputation. Before Murong Soon could finish speaking, she saw that female ghost faction disciple who brushed past them reach out at lightning speed to grab her youngest disciple's face. However, her fingers were suffused with a faint black glow, evidently dipped in poison. How could her youngest disciple's face be fine after this grab? She was simply too audacious. Murong Soon was about to explode. The ghost faction female disciple's sudden grab didn't cause the little stoic to panic in the slightest. She extended her palm even faster than the ghost faction female disciple and circulated some mystic energy around her palm to block the ghost faction female disciple's grab. Chapter 390. Little Junior Sister. Everyone cried out in surprise because they could see that this female disciple's cultivation was not low. At the very least, it was not below their holy water sect disciples. They heard that the ghost faction had a set of crooked cultivation methods that allowed their cultivation speed to be many times faster than normal mystic cultivators. This ghost faction female disciple's fingers were unable to penetrate the mystic energy defense on the back of the little girl's hand and only left a shallow white mark on her left hand. Abba lowered his head to look at the white mark on his hand. He raised his head with an icy gaze and stared at the ghost faction female disciple as if he was looking at a corpse. The next moment, the ghost faction female disciple's body flew up and was kicked far away by Emolien. She coughed out a mouthful of blood and collapsed on the ground with a dispirited expression. Emolien took Abba's small hand and examined it carefully. Her fingers lightly caressed that shallow white mark. The ghost faction female disciple was a tough nut to crack. She didn't make a sound or cry out in pain, but she couldn't get up from the ground for a long time after being kicked by Prince Emo. The ghost faction female disciple's eyes peeked out from her long bangs. At this moment, she was staring resentfully at Abba, who was beside Emolien. To be precise, her gaze was glued to Crown Prince Lien's hand that was holding the little girl's hand. "What are you doing?" Another ghost faction disciple hastily ran up and tried to pull the female disciple up from the ground. His eyes, which were wrapped in a gray headscarf, stared vigilantly at the holy water sect group. "Who are you? Making a big fuss here. Are you an idiot?" Princess Mi retorted without a second word. "You were clearly the ones who made the first move, all right? What do you mean by what are we doing? What can we do? Isn't that so? There's something wrong with your head." Chong Yushi also cursed. The ghost faction disciple's gloomy eyes looked straight at Princess Mi before sweeping over everyone. He felt that he and his junior sister had no chance of winning against so many people, so he resentfully planned to support his junior sister and leave. Who knew that the little stoic would say coldly, "Did I say you could leave?" The male disciple who was supporting the ghost faction female disciple suddenly froze. He stiffened his neck and turned his head around. His malicious eyes locked onto the young lady. "What do you want? My junior sister has already been reduced to this state because of you. Are you still not willing to let her go? She only has herself to blame. It has nothing to do with anyone." The little stoic shouted coldly and grabbed the feral with a swish. "You want to leave so easily after injuring me? Do you think I eat vegetarian and chant Buddhist scriptures all day long and assist the common people? Me. My junior sister has already suffered." Before the male ghost faction disciple could finish his sentence, he immediately sensed the stoic-faced little girl in front of him brandishing a terrifying mystic energy towards him and his junior sister. Boom! The nearby white jade corridor trembled, and jade fragments fell from the corridor. The little stoic leaped up and arrived in front of the ghost faction disciple with a whoosh. The mystic energy in her entire body surged, and a feral fell from the air. A line of fire shot out from the feral. This Xian weapon could feel its young master's anger and had already displayed its current peak state. F***CK. Wei Nanfeng screamed savagery in his heart, but he chuckled as he watched this commotion. Speechless, really speechless. Why did he provoke the little stoic without rhyme or reason? He had finally seen through the little stoic. She was usually easy to deal with, but once you crossed her bottom line, she would absolutely exterminate you directly. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.